一些珍贵的东西，比如说像除了键盘之外，还有一个高级的耳机，然后还有一个有女孩子名字的水壶。那我们等一下都会拿过来，如果是你遗失的，请来跟我们认领，我们绝对没有想要留下来的意思。谢谢。
大家好，我是这一次的行政 David。那有人说这一次 Osdc 的那个无线网络很不好，因为抱歉，Osdc 的人力规模跟 COSCUP 是不能比的。然后我要跟你说 ，Osdc 不是 COSCUP， 也不是 HIT， 所以请你尽量就是说，如果你要用你的3G 的话，尽量用 USB 连接线，不然的话，其实我昨天自己连那个 Osdc 2012的时候都有遇到，就是 DNS 查询不到的问题。那到底发生什么事，我也不想讲，就这样子，请大家帮忙，谢谢。
好，那非常感谢那个最后一个下午了，大家在这边，对，希望不要睡着。那接下来我们要请，总经理聘就是目前在 TPF 就是 Perl Foundation 跟 Python Foundation 都非常活跃的，Allison 来帮我们讲，就是怎么在 Open Source 的 project 中进行合作。那我觉得，大家越来越参加越多活动啊，那就是接下来要怎么？我希望可以台湾可以有更多的 open source project， 所以我想要请 Allison 来帮我们，讲解这个部分，或者是分享他的经验。那就接下来请大家掌声鼓励，欢迎 Allison。
So we spend a great deal of time talking about the technical side of projects, how to write better code, how to test our code. But one of the things that we don't talk about very often, and it's very important, is more of the human side of open source projects. You can have a project with absolutely perfect code that still has problems or fails entirely because of poor relationships between the humans working on the project. So over the years, I've started to think about this, or I like to think of it as it's like we're traveling a path, and as we travel on this path of working on open source, we're all working to become better. So we're working to become better programmers, but we're also working to become better human beings, better people, and to do a better job of working together. You might even think about it as kind of like a path to enlightenment, that, you know, as in many things in life, we're always learning to become better, growing as human beings. So this is really my personal philosophy, but I thought I would share it with all of you, and I hope that it's also useful to you. So the first thing is that the center of every open source project is really the people. There is the code, and this is important, but the center is the people. Now, there are different kinds of people. There are the people who work together to make the project, the people who write code or write documentation or maybe write tests. There are also the people who use the software, and these are an important part of the project. There are people who work on the software that your project uses. So many times when you're working on a project, you'll also be working with other projects. Maybe you have a problem with their software, so you need to send them a patch. And then there's the people who use your software. Maybe you're writing a library or a module and someone is using your software. So you have ways of communicating with them as well. So why do people work on open source software? Because this is a very important part of understanding how we can make open source software work better. So a very, very key reason that people work on it is for the fun of it. You'll find that maybe in their day job they get to write code, but it's not very exciting code. So they come to open source because it gives them a chance to work on new and exciting things. But what we know about fun is that it's better when you share it. So as we work together on these open source projects, we can actually increase the fun. People work on open source in order to give to others, and this is an important part of our growth as human beings, giving to others. You know, we're not stingy and holding things to ourselves, we're actually reaching out to the world. There are many rewards to working on open source, so that will draw people in because it's not just giving away, it's also what they receive from it as they work on the software. One of the big ones is the respect. You know, as you work together with other people to create something new, they will get to know your skills and they'll recognize how important you are to the project. And that gives you a sense of belonging and accomplishment. So when you're working with other people, remember that this is an important motivation for them and make sure that you show respect to them in every way that you can. Because that helps encourage them and help them to want to stay involved. Another important aspect is appreciation. So as people are doing work, to talk with them, it can be even as simple as an email message that says, thank you so much for that one little thing that you did, that really meant a lot to me. And that builds up a culture of appreciation, and it helps us all to keep motivated to keep working on open source. There's also giving credit to others. So thanks is you know, saying something directly to them, but also making sure that as you talk to other people, you raise up others around you and say, this person here did such a wonderful thing. And by doing that, we help build up the whole community. So one of the things that gets people interested in open source is understanding that as we work together, we can actually do more. We're stronger when we work together. And part of this is simple math. You know, if you have 2 people, they can write at least twice as much code as one person, and 3 people 3 times as much code. But there's more to it than just math. There's also a sense that when we're working together, we can make each other stronger and better. So part of that is in encouraging each other. So when you see someone who's working on a very difficult problem, you know, maybe you can go to them and just help them to see how well they've done in the past. Encourage them to say, you've done great work, and I see that you will do great work in the future. So you can actually empower them to do better work simply by talking to them, simply by sharing with them. And then also there's the fact that when you have many people together, they will have different sets of skills. So when you're working, standing together, working together, maybe you know the 5 things that you need to know, and this other person knows the other 5 things, and together you have a full set of knowledge to solve a problem. Whereas if you weren't together, there would be no way to solve the problem because you wouldn't know all the answers. So it's important to realize that it's not just straight 1 programmer plus 1 programmer equals 2 programmers. We really do, there's almost like a multiplication effect that we have when we start working together. And it's also one of the important things that we can do is I would say, encouraging each other to look beyond into the future. That is, we inspire others to solve problems. Sometimes that's as simple as saying, I had an idea, and someone else hears your idea and then decides to go and make it a reality. Sometimes it's by looking at the work that another person has done or is doing, and maybe you haven't done all the work, but you have that one little piece of an idea that they needed to reach out and go farther. So the key thing about working on open source is that we're not just standing alone. So when you're working with other people, the greatest skill that you will be working to improve is communication skills. So we communicate about the plans that we have, about how do we want to make the software, about the plans that you personally have. So maybe you're going to work on one feature. One of the things I've seen in open source projects is when people fail to communicate, you could have 2 different people, both have good plans for improving the software, but they clash. So if you work on one plan, it will actually harm the other plan. So it's very, very important to make sure that you do stay in constant communication about what you're working on. It's almost like a hive of bees, it's just a constant buzz of communication. And you will find that you're often communicating about possibilities for what you could do in the future and sort of resolving to what's the best way to solve the problem. And in this, you can communicate in a way that is contentious, that is angry. I've seen that in some projects, and that makes it very hard to make progress. So one of the things that we're learning on our path is how to embrace different possibilities and discuss different possibilities while still being open-minded and fully listening to other people and the ideas that other people have. And you also want to communicate as you make progress, as you finish a feature or make something new. You're communicating constantly about what you've done. And that may be by email if your project communicates that way. It may be by Twitter. There are many different ways you can let people know, but the skills of, sometimes we feel shy about saying what we've done, or we don't want to sound like we're bragging, but that's not what it is. It's very, very important to make sure that people know what's happening in the project. It's good for the project and it's good for them as well, because they can learn from the work that you've done. So another communication skill is the ability to ask questions and to listen to questions from others. Sometimes when you've hit a problem, one of the great advantages of having many other people around you is that someone else may have solved this problem before, and if you get on IRC and you just ask one question, they could save you days and days and days of work. So it really is worthwhile building those relationships so that you'll feel comfortable just coming out and asking a question. And in the same way, when others are learning, you can be responsive and make sure that you don't, make sure that you don't put them down for asking a question. There are times when you get that in a project, someone just asks a simple question and they respond with RTFM, which maybe it saved the person who was answering the question a bit of time, but that didn't really help the person who was asking the question. And worse, it taught that person, they came with a question and they got that answer. It taught them that they shouldn't ask questions, where that's not what you want to be teaching new people. You want to teach them to reach out to others, to communicate with others. And learning the skills of how to give answers that are helpful to people, and how to make them feel like they've done a good thing in asking, and help them see that they can walk down the path as well. So help them take the next steps along the path. Now sometimes you do have to correct people or criticize people. There are many ways to do things right, but that doesn't mean every way is the best way. But at the same time, when you give someone feedback, there are different ways to do it. Very harsh feedback will tend to make the person not hear what you said. So really the best way to get them to change is to come in very gently and sort of help them learn to take the next step. Now that also means that sometimes when someone is giving you feedback, you'll have to give them some grace if they don't do it very well. Sometimes they may give you feedback that is too harsh, but I think that's also part of the path, is learning to sometimes have a skin, a thicker skin, or a bit of understanding that even if they said that poorly and they should have said it better, there may be a bit in what they said that is true. So it's good to listen to them and also respond gently to them, even if they spoke in a way that is not polite. So the other important communication skill is not about talking, it's about listening. So we need to make sure that as we communicate, we're not just telling other people what we think, but we listen to what they think. And sometimes that means just sitting very quietly for a while and letting someone talk. But it's not just about hearing their words. It's even more about understanding what they think. And we have a saying in English that if you want to understand someone, to really understand them, then you have to walk a mile in their shoes. I guess because the shoes give you blisters, so you understand how they think. So it's really developing a sympathy for other people around you. Now, some people think that you have to be a genius to work on open source, and that's just not true. There are many very, very intelligent people in open source, Larry Wall and Linus Torvalds and Guido van Rossum, but you don't have to be a genius to work in open source. There are so many things that open source projects need, every level of skill, every level of interest. And the most important thing, no matter how intelligent you are, is to be humble. Because in that humility, you will be open to ideas from other people. You will be open to see new ways of doing things. And by doing that, you will welcome other new people into the project. So pride is one of the most horribly destructive things in open source projects, because it essentially tells people, I don't need you. I am all on my own. I'll do everything myself. I know the right way. While humility is one of the greatest ways of growing open source projects. And by being humble, we also welcome in new people. So there's diversity in gender, there's diversity in culture, there's a richness that you can add to open source projects by being open to different kinds of people. And there's also differences between different projects. So it's almost like the language and culture of a country. You know, if you go to the Linux project or the Perl project or the Python project or the Ruby project, you'll see that they have different ways of relating and different ways of working. And they're all good, but they are also all very different. So in humility, we can also see that maybe our project is not the only way, it's not the best way, and to appreciate the good that other projects are also doing. Now, open source is not all fun. It is a lot of fun, but it's not all fun. It's also a responsibility when you agree to participate in an open source project. You're taking a weight on your shoulders, and this is also a good thing. You know, this weight of responsibility is part of teaching us to be better humans. But life can get in the way of those responsibilities that we take on. There are other responsibilities as well. There are, you know, wives and husbands, there are children, there are parents, there's jobs, and so we may accept a responsibility for a time and then, you know, sort of realize that maybe we can't carry that load anymore ourselves. There's sort of a natural progression where someone enters a project as a new person and they don't do very much, and then they start taking on more and more and more, and then after a while they'll have to start taking on less and less and less again. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That's actually a perfectly healthy way for projects to grow and change over time. But you do have to keep in mind, sort of keep that mindset, you know, as you're that new person and you're taking on more and more, you know, keep in mind who's going to do this next? Who's going to continue this work after I don't have the time? So it's a continuous process. You know, part of our path is also teaching others, making sure we share the knowledge that we've gained. And also learning. So as we're climbing this path, we'll learn more and more from others around us. So it's kind of a continuous process there of gaining knowledge for ourselves and also sharing knowledge with others and helping build others up. So as you're working on open source, be happy. Put a smile on your face. And help make others happy. Because that happiness is what gives us the power to build great things. Thank you. Any questions? Do you feel happier now? Thanks very much.
好，那这个 session 就可能就提早结束。那我们下一个 session 就照样在1点50分准时开始。